The coffee pot shattered on the floor. Silence. Absolute silence. Seraphiel stood frozen behind the counter of the Rusty Spoon as the door chimed, not for a regular, but for 4 men in tactical gear and 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than the building itself. They weren't looking for a menu. They were looking for her. Everyone in town thought Seraphiel was just the foolish waitress who gave free refills to the grumpy homeless guy in booth 4. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Because the man she had been feeding wasn't homeless, and the document those lawyers were about to slam on the counter wasn't a lawsuit. It was a declaration of war that would tear this entire town apart. This is the story of how a cup of coffee changed history. The alarm clock on Seraphiel Jenkins' nightstand didn't buzz. It rattled, a death rattle of cheap plastic vibrating against the peeling laminate of her bedside table. 4:15 a.m. Seraphiel slapped the snooze button, not to sleep, but to stop the noise from waking her 6-year-old brother, Logan, in the next room. She sat up, the cold air of the trailer biting at her exposed skin. Her breath came out in a thin, white mist. The heater had died 3 days ago, and the repairman wanted $200 just to look at it. $200 she didn't have. She moved through the dark with the muscle memory of the exhausted. Uniform on, stains checked, hair up in a messy bun. She paused by the kitchen counter, staring at the stack of envelopes. Final notice. Past due. Urgent. They were like vultures circling a carcass. Just one more shift, she whispered to herself. A mantra she had been repeating for 3 years. Just get through the shift. By 5 a.m., Seraphiel was unlocking the front door of the Rusty Spoon. It was a dying diner on the edge of Scranton, Pennsylvania, a place where dreams went to rust alongside the steel mills. The neon sign outside flickered. The O in Spoon permanently burnt out. The routine was her armor. Brew the coffee, dark roast, always burned. Wipe the counters, check the sugar dispensers. And then, at 5:15 a.m. sharp, the door would open. He never came in late. He never came in early. The bell jingled. A gust of wind blew in dead leaves. And Aidan was a ghost of a man. He wore a tweed coat that had been fashionable in the 1970s, but was now moth-eaten and stained with mud. His pants were hemmed with duct tape. He smelled of old library books and damp wool. Most of the other staff, Rick the manager, and Chloe, the evening waitress, called him the Stray. They wanted him banned. They said he scared away the good customers, though Seraphiel hadn't seen a good customer in months. "Morning, Aidan," Seraphiel said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. She grabbed the pot of decaf before he even sat down. Aidan grunted. He shuffled to booth 4, the one with the rip in the red vinyl seat that she had tried to patch with electrical tape. He sat down heavily, placing a battered leather satchel on the table. He treated that bag like it held the crown jewels, though Seraphiel assumed it was just filled with old newspapers. "Coffee's burnt," Aidan muttered as she poured. He didn't look up. He was staring at his hands, which were trembling slightly. "Fresh pot is brewing, Aidan. This is just to warm your hands," she said softly. "The usual? 2 eggs, scrambled hard, dry wheat toast?" "And don't burn the toast this time," he snapped. "I'm not paying for charcoal." "I know, Aidan." Seraphiel went to the kitchen. Rick, the manager, was leaning against the prep table, scrolling on his phone. He was a sweaty man who wore too much cologne to cover the smell of onions. "The Stray is back?" Rick asked, not looking up. "His name is Aidan, Rick." "Whatever. Make sure he actually has money today. Last week he was 50 cents short, and you put it in the till." "I saw you." Seraphiel stiffened. "He was just short. It happens." "Yeah, well, charity doesn't keep the lights on, Seraphiel. We're in the red. The owners are talking about selling the lot to some developer from New York. If that happens, we're all out. So stop feeding the pigeons." Serafield's stomach churned. If the diner closed, she was done. No other place in town offered flexible shifts that allowed her to take Logan to his physical therapy appointments. She made Aiden's breakfast with care. She scraped the burnt edges off the toast. She added a slice of tomato on the side, something she would have to pay for herself if Rick noticed. But she knew Aiden needed the vitamins. He looked paler than usual today. His skin had a grey, waxy texture, and his eyes were sunken. When she brought the plate out, Aiden was clutching his chest. "Aiden!" She set the plate down quickly. "Are you okay?" He wheezed, straightening up and waving her away aggressively. "I'm fine. Just the damp. Get back to work." Serafiel hesitated, then stepped back. She watched him eat. He ate with a desperation that broke her heart, wiping the plate clean with the bread. When he finished, he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a handful of change and began counting it on the table. Clink, clink, clink. He stopped. He patted his other pockets. He checked the breast pocket of his coat. He checked the satchel. His shoulders slumped. He looked small. Serafiel walked over. "Everything okay, Aiden?" He didn't look at her. His voice was a whisper. I seem to have misplaced my coin purse. I had it. I swear I had it." Rick was watching from the service window, his eyes narrowing. He started walking toward the swinging doors. Serafiel moved fast. She blocked Rick's view with her body. "It's on the house today, Aiden," she said loudly enough for Rick to hear. But then she leaned in. "I've got it. It's my treat. For your birthday." Aiden looked up. His eyes were a startling shade of icy blue, sharp and intelligent amidst the ruin of his face. "It's not my birthday." "It is today," she whispered. She pulled a $5 bill from her apron, her only tips from the first hour, and slapped it on the receipt. Rick pushed through the kitchen doors. "Problem here?" "No problem," Serafiel said, holding up the cash. "Customer paid, and he left a tip." Rick snatched the bill, eyeing Aiden with disgust. "Make sure he leaves. We need the table for paying customers." The diner was empty. Aiden stood up slowly. He looked at the $5 bill in Rick's hand, then at Serafiel. He didn't say thank you. He didn't smile. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a napkin. He scribbled something on it with a stub of a pencil. "Here," Aiden said, shoving the napkin into Serafiel's hand. "Don't lose it." Then he shuffled out into the cold rain. Serafiel looked at the napkin. It wasn't a phone number. It wasn't a thank you note. It was a series of numbers. 14, 92, 11, or 05. "Great," she sighed, crumpling it into her pocket. "He's giving me lottery numbers." She didn't know it then, but those weren't lottery numbers. They were the combination to a safe deposit box in Zurich that hadn't been opened in 30 years. And Aiden wasn't just a homeless man. He was Aiden Sterling, the vanished patriarch of Sterling Industries, a man presumed dead by half the world and hunted by the other half, and the hunters were getting close. 3 weeks passed. The winter deepened, turning the roads of Scranton into sheets of black ice. For Serafiel, things were going from bad to catastrophic. Logan's therapy costs had gone up. The trailer park management raised the lot rent by 10%. Serafiel had taken to skipping dinner so Logan could have second helpings. She was losing weight. Her uniform hung loosely on her frame, and the dark circles under her eyes were becoming permanent. But every morning, like clockwork, Aiden was there. He was deteriorating. His cough had turned into a hacking, wet sound that rattled his thin chest. He moved slower. Some days he couldn't even hold the fork, his hands shaking so violently that Seraphil would have to pretend to clean the table next to him, just so she could subtly help him butter his toast. They developed a strange, quiet bond. He never thanked her outright, but he stopped complaining about the coffee. He started bringing in old newspapers he found, leaving them open to the crossword puzzle, completed in perfect, elegant calligraphy. "You're smart," he grumbled one morning after she solved a riddle he'd been stuck on. "Wasted here. Why aren't you in school?" "Life happens," Seraphil said, refilling his cup. "My parents died when I was 20. Logan needed me. Tuition money became rent money." Aidan stared at her, his blue eyes piercing. "Sacrifice. It's a noble rot. Eats you from the inside out." "It's not rot if it's for family," she countered. Aidan sneered, a bitter, ugly sound. "Family? Family are just strangers who share your blood and wait for you to die so they can pick the meat off your bones." He looked away, staring out the window at the grey sky. "Beware of wolves in Italian suits, Seraphil. They smile with their teeth." She thought he was just being senile. But 2 days later, the prophecy began to unfold. It was a Tuesday. The diner was busier than usual because the heater at the local construction site had busted, sending a dozen workers into the Rusty Spoon for warmth. Seraphil was running ragged, balancing 4 plates at once. Around 8:30 a.m., a black Mercedes sedan pulled into the cracked parking lot. It looked like a spaceship landed on the moon, sleek, spotless, and completely out of place. 2 men stepped out. They wore charcoal suits that fit too perfectly. They didn't look at the diner. They looked at the property line. One of them pointed at the roof, then at the ground, while the other took notes on a tablet. Rick came running out of the office, tucking his shirt in. He looked terrified and excited all at once. "This is it," Rick hissed at Seraphil as he passed the counter. "Look sharp. That's the acquisition team from Sterling Global." Sterling Global. The name meant nothing to Seraphil, but it made Aidan drop his fork. Seraphil looked over at booth 4. Aidan had slid down in his seat. He had pulled his collar up high, hiding his face behind the menu. He was trembling, not from the cold, but from fear. "Aidan," Seraphil whispered, moving to his table. "Don't," he hissed. "Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. Just stand there. Block me." Seraphil frowned, but did as he asked. She stood with her back to the door, wiping a ketchup bottle, shielding Aidan from the entrance. The bell chimed. The 2 suits walked in. The air in the diner changed. The construction workers quieted down. These men radiated money and power. Rick rushed forward, hand extended. "Gentlemen, welcome to the Rusty Spoon. I'm Rick, the manager." The taller man, who had slicked back blonde hair and eyes like a shark, ignored Rick's hand. He scanned the room. His gaze swept over the construction workers, the counter, and landed on Seraphil. "We are looking for the owner," the man said. His voice was smooth, cultured, and devoid of warmth. "That would be Mr. Henderson," Rick stammered. "He's not here, but I can—" "We know who the owner is," the man interrupted. "We are here to serve a notice of intent. This property is part of a larger acquisition for the new Sterling distribution hub. We are buying the block." "Buying?" Rick's eyes lit up. "Well, that sounds— We are buying the debt," the man corrected. "Mr. Henderson is in default. We are foreclosing in 48 hours. The building will be demolished next Monday." Seraphil dropped the ketchup bottle. It didn't break, but it hit the table with a loud thud. Demolished. Next Monday. "You can't just— People work here," Seraphil said, her voice shaking. "We have families." The shark-eyed man looked at her with mild amusement. "This is business, miss. Not a charity." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope, tossing it onto the counter. "Give this to Henderson. Tell him Jaden Sterling sends his regards." Jaden Sterling. At the mention of that name, a sound came from booth 4. A gasp, a choke. The suit turned his head. "Who is that?" Seraphil's heart hammered against her ribs. She took a step to the side, trying to cover Aiden, but the man stepped around her. He looked down at the shivering figure in the dirty tweed coat. Aiden kept his head down, his face buried in his hands. "Just a homeless regular," Seraphil said quickly, stepping between them. "He's leaving. Leave him alone." The man stared at Aiden for a long, uncomfortable moment. He sniffed the air, wrinkling his nose at the smell of damp wool. "Disgusting," the man muttered. "When we take over, clean out the vermin." He turned and walked out, his partner following. The door closed. The silence stretched. Rick grabbed the envelope, his hands shaking. "I have to call Henderson. We're closed. Everyone out. I need to lock up." "Rick, you can't kick everyone out," Seraphil protested. "I said out!" Rick screamed, the stress breaking him. "You too, Seraphil. Go home. We might not open tomorrow." Seraphil turned to Aiden. He was hyperventilating. His face was a mask of sheer panic. "Aiden, come on," she said gently. "I'll drive you, wherever you need to go." "They found me," Aiden whispered. He looked up at her, and for the first time, Seraphil saw tears in his eyes. "Jaden found me." "Who is Jaden?" Seraphil asked as she helped him stand. Aiden gripped her arm with surprising strength. His fingernails dug into her skin. "The devil," Aiden rasped. "My son." The rain had turned to sleet by the time Seraphil's rusted Ford Taurus pulled into the Shady Pines trailer park. The name was a lie. There were no pines, only mud and the skeletal remains of a playground that had been condemned in the 90s. Aiden sat in the passenger seat, clutching his satchel to his chest. He hadn't spoken since the revelation in the diner. He stared out the window at the rows of aluminum siding, his expression unreadable. "It's not much," Seraphil said, killing the engine. The car shuddered and died with a whine. "But it's warm, and nobody looks for anyone here." Aiden looked at the trailer. It was beige, with a blue tarp covering a patch of the roof where a branch had fallen last winter. "It's a tin can," he muttered, but the malice was gone from his voice. He sounded tired, defeated. "It's home," Seraphil said firmly. She helped him up the wooden steps. Inside, the trailer was cramped, but meticulously clean. It smelled of bleach and oatmeal. On the worn beige carpet, a young boy with leg braces was building a tower out of plastic blocks. "Seraphil!" Logan chirped, his face lighting up. He tried to stand, bracing himself on the sofa. "Stay down, buddy. I'm coming to you," Seraphil said, dropping her keys and rushing to hug him. She kissed his forehead, checking his temperature automatically. "Logan, this is Aiden. He's a friend from work. He's going to stay for dinner." Logan looked at Aiden with wide, curious eyes. Most adults looked at Aiden with disgust or pity. Logan just saw a new person. "Do you like Legos?" Logan asked. Aiden stood awkwardly in the doorway, dripping water onto the linoleum. He looked at the boy, then at his own dirty hands. He seemed to shrink. I used to build things, a long time ago." "Skyscrapers?" Logan asked. Aiden's lip twitched, a ghost of a smile. "Bigger. I built the things that make the skyscrapers possible." That night, dinner was meager. Seraphil heated up a can of tomato soup and made grilled cheese sandwiches with the generic brand bread that turned to paste if you chewed it too long. They sat around the small laminate table. Aiden ate slowly. He watched Seraphil cut Logan's sandwich into triangles. He watched her wipe tomato soup off Logan's chin. He watched the way she laughed when Logan made a joke about a penguin. "You're a good mother," Aidan said suddenly, his voice raspy. "Sister," Seraphil corrected. "But thanks. Where are the parents?" "Mum died of cancer 3 years ago. Dad left before Logan was born, went out for cigarettes and ended up in Arizona with a new wife." Seraphil said it without bitterness. It was just a fact, like the weather. Aidan put his spoon down. "My son," he began, staring into the red soup, "went to the best boarding schools in Switzerland. He had nannies, tutors, horses. I gave him everything." "Jaden?" Seraphil asked. The name felt dangerous to say. "Jaden!" Aidan spat the name. "He didn't want the business. He wanted the money, the liquidity. Sterling Industries builds infrastructure, bridges, dams, power grids, things that last. Jaden. Jaden likes algorithms. He likes stripping assets. He wanted to sell the legacy to a conglomerate in Beijing for a quick infusion of cash to fund his tech startups." Aidan looked up, his blue eyes blazing. "I said no. I told him I'd write him out of the will before I let him dismantle my life's work. 2 days later, my brakes failed on the I-81. Seraphil froze, her sandwich halfway to her mouth. "You think he tried to kill you?" "I don't think. I know. I survived the crash. But I knew if I went to the hospital, he'd finish the job there. Or he'd have me declared incompetent. Dementia. Senility. He has the lawyers, the doctors, the judges in his pocket. So, Aidan Sterling died in that wreck, and the homeless man you called the Stray walked out of the woods. How long ago was that?" Seraphil asked. 6 months. Seraphil looked at the frail man in front of her. It sounded insane. It sounded like the plot of a bad movie. And yet, she remembered the fear in his eyes when the man in the suit walked in. She remembered the expensive car. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "The police?" Aidan laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "In this town, Jaden owns the precinct. He donated their new tactical gear. No, I needed to disappear. I needed to wait until the board meeting. The annual shareholder meeting is on December 24th. If I show up there, alive, and with the proof I have in this bag, I can stop the sale. I can fire him." "December 24th? Seraphil looked at the calendar on the fridge. "That's in 4 days." "Yes," Aidan whispered. He clutched his chest, wincing. "If I live that long." Suddenly, a violent coughing fit overtook him. He doubled over, hacking so hard the table shook. When he pulled his napkin away, it was speckled with bright red blood. "Aidan!" Seraphil was at his side in a second. "I'm fine," he wheezed, shoving the napkin into his pocket. "Just tired." "You're not fine. You need a doctor." "No doctors!" Aidan shouted, startling Logan. "No hospitals. They enter my name in the system, and Jaden finds me in 5 minutes. I'd rather die in this trailer than in one of his private clinics." He slumped back, his skin turning a terrifying shade of grey. "Just let me rest. Please." Seraphil hesitated, then nodded. She helped him to the sofa. She covered him with her own duvet, the heavy one she saved for the coldest nights. Aidan fell asleep, almost instantly. Seraphil sat up for hours, watching the window, watching the rain, waiting for a black Mercedes to roll down the muddy lane. She fell asleep in the armchair, a kitchen knife clutched in her hand. The screaming woke her. It wasn't a scream of pain, but of terror. Seraphil bolted upright, the knife slipping from her hand and clattering to the floor. It was 3:02 a.m. Logan was crying in his room. Seraphil rushed in. "Logan, what is it?" Logan was sitting up in bed, pointing at the living room. "The old man. He's making scary noises." Seraphil ran back to the living room. Aidan was thrashing on the sofa. He was caught in a nightmare, his limbs flailing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was burning up. "No, don't sign it. Don't—" Aidan moaned. Seraphil touched his forehead. It was like touching a stove. He was burning with fever. "Aidan, wake up!" She shook him. He didn't wake. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he began to seize. Panic, cold and sharp, washed over Seraphil. She couldn't treat this with aspirin and soup. He was dying. "Logan, get your coat," Seraphil ordered, her voice surprisingly steady. "We have to go." "Where?" "The hospital." "But Aidan said no hospitals," Logan whimpered, rubbing his eyes. "Aidan doesn't get a vote anymore. Move." Getting Aidan into the car was a nightmare. He was dead weight, his body limp and sweaty. Seraphil had to drag him through the mud, her boots slipping, the freezing rain soaking them both to the bone. She managed to shove him into the back seat, buckling him in as he mumbled incoherent gibberish about ledger entries and offshore accounts. She drove like a maniac. She ran 2 red lights on Main Street, praying a cop would pull her up, just so she'd have an escort. But the streets were empty. They reached Mercy General at 3:45 a.m. The emergency room was awash of fluorescent light and the smell of antiseptic. "Help! I need help!" Seraphil screamed, running in. 2 nurses rushed out with a gurney. They hauled Aidan onto it. "Name?" the intake nurse asked, fingers poised over a keyboard. Seraphil froze. "They enter my name, and Jaden finds me." "John," Seraphil said breathlessly. "John Doe. He's homeless. I found him on the street." The nurse looked skeptical but typed it in. "Insurance?" "None." "Okay. We'll stabilize him. You can wait in the lobby." Seraphil sank into a plastic chair, pulling Logan onto her lap. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. She looked down at her hands. They were covered in Aidan's blood from when she'd dragged him. She sat there for 2 hours. Logan fell asleep against her chest. Around 6 a.m., a doctor came out. He looked exhausted. "Family of John Doe?" Seraphil stood up. I'm a friend." "He has severe pneumonia," the doctor said, "complicated by advanced heart failure, and we found the traces of arsenic in his blood." Seraphil's blood ran cold. "Arsenic?" "Chronic poisoning," the doctor said, frowning. "Low doses over a long period of time. It mimics heart disease. If he hadn't come in tonight, he would have been dead by morning. We've started him on chelation therapy, but he's in a coma. It's touch and go." Arsenic. Jaden hadn't just tampered with the brakes. He had been poisoning his own father for months. "Can I see him?" "Briefly. He's in ICU, room 304. Seraphil carried Logan to the room. Aidan looked tiny in the hospital bed, tubes running in and out of his nose and arms. The powerful industrialist was gone. Only a broken old man remained. Seraphil spotted the leather satchel. The nurses had shoved it into the corner, underneath a chair. She picked it up. It was heavy. She sat in the chair while Logan slept on the foot of the bed. She opened the bag. It was stuffed with newspapers, mostly the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times. But at the bottom, beneath a pair of dirty socks, was a thick leather binder. Seraphil opened it. It wasn't just papers. It was a dossier. Bank transfers. Emails printed out. Blueprints. She flipped through the pages. She didn't understand all the financial jargon, but some things were clear. Transfer, $50,000 to Cayman's Holding Group. Authorized by J. Sterling. Date, 2 days before Aidan's accident. And then a photo. It was an old photograph, the colors fading. It showed a younger Aidan standing in front of a massive steel bridge, his arm around a young boy who looked miserable. On the back, written in the same elegant calligraphy Aidan used for his crosswords. For Jaden. May you build bridges, not walls. And underneath that, a newer note, written in shaky, jagged letters. I created a monster. Now I must destroy it. "Oh, Aidan," Seraphiel whispered. Suddenly her phone buzzed. It was a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, who lived in the trailer next to hers. "Mrs. Higgins, Seraphiel, honey, is everything okay? There are 2 big black SUVs parked in front of your trailer. Men in suits are banging on your door. They look like cops, but they aren't wearing uniforms." Seraphiel dropped the phone. They weren't at the hospital yet. They were at her home. She looked at Aidan, unconscious in the bed. She looked at Logan, sleeping peacefully. She realized with a jolt of terror that she had left the napkin, the one with the safe deposit box numbers, on her kitchen counter, right next to her car keys. If they broke in, if they found that napkin, Aidan lost his leverage. And if they found out she wasn't home. She looked at the hospital room door. Through the small glass window, she saw a man walking down the hallway. He wasn't a doctor. He was wearing a trench coat. He was holding a phone to his ear, looking at room numbers. He stopped at room 302. He moved to room 303. He was looking for Aidan. Seraphiel grabbed Logan. She grabbed the satchel. "Wake up, baby," she hissed. "We have to play the spy game again." "Is it the bad men?" Logan asked sleepily. "Yes, the bad men are here." Seraphiel scanned the room. There was no other exit. We were on the 3rd floor. The handle to room 304 began to turn. Seraphiel didn't think. She grabbed the metal IV pole, ripping the cords out of the wall but leaving them attached to Aidan. She shoved the heavy medical cart in front of the door just as it opened. Crash! The door hit the cart. A man grunted on the other side. "He's in here!" a voice shouted. "Get the team!" Seraphiel looked around wildly. The window. It was a crazy idea. It was a suicidal idea. But the door was buckling as 2 men threw their weight against it. Seraphiel ran to the window and threw it open. A blast of freezing air hit her. Outside there was a fire escape, slick with ice, about 4 feet away from the ledge. "Logan," Seraphiel said, her voice trembling. "I need you to be the bravest boy in the world. I need you to climb on my back." "I'm scared," Logan cried. "I know, I am too." The door splintered. A hand reached through the gap, fumbling for the cart. Seraphiel climbed onto the window ledge. The wind whipped her hair into her face. She looked down at the parking lot, 3 stories below. "Hold on tight," she whispered. She jumped. The air between the hospital window and the fire escape was a 4-foot abyss of wind and sleet. Seraphiel didn't look down. She looked at the rusty iron grating that was the only solid thing in a world spinning out of control. "Hold on, Logan, don't let go of my neck," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She leaped. For a terrifying second, she was weightless. Then, slam! Her shins collided with the metal railing. Pain exploded up her legs, hot and blinding. She gasped, nearly losing her grip on the satchel, but she scrambled over the rail, collapsing onto the icy metal grate. Logan whimpered into her shoulder, his small arms choking her. "I've got you," Seraphiel panted, her breath coming in white puffs. "We're okay." She dragged herself into the shadows of the fire escape just as the window above them shattered completely. Shards of glass rained down, tinkling like sinister wind chimes. "She jumped!" a voice roared from the hospital room. "I see blood on the railing. Check the alley." Seraphiel pressed herself flat against the brick wall. They were on the 3rd floor. The fire escape stairs were slick with black ice. If she tried to run down them with Logan on her back, she'd slip and break her neck. She stayed frozen, listening. "Forget the girl for a second," another voice commanded, calm, authoritative. "The transport team is at the loading dock. Get the old man downstairs. We need to secure the package before the cops start asking questions about the noise. We'll pick up the girl's trail using the tracker in the satchel." Seraphil's eyes widened. She looked down at Aiden's battered leather bag. A tracker. She frantically felt along the lining of the bag. In the bottom corner, she felt a hard, circular lump the size of a coin. She ripped the lining open with her fingernails and pulled out a small, blinking black disc. They knew exactly where she was. She looked at the device, then at the alley below. A garbage truck was rumbling past, its compactor whining. Seraphil didn't hesitate. She timed it, leaned over the railing, and dropped the tracker. It landed squarely in the back of the passing truck, nestled among the trash bags. "Go get 'em," she whispered. She waited until the voices in the room above faded. They were moving Aiden. They were taking him to the loading dock. "Logan," she said, turning her head to look at her brother. "We have to play a new game. It's called Ghost. We have to move without making a single sound. Can you do that?" Logan nodded, his eyes wide and wet, but he clamped his mouth shut. They descended the stairs, step by agonizing step. Seraphil's shins were throbbing, likely bruised to the bone, but the adrenaline kept her moving. When they reached the ground floor, she didn't run for the street. She ran toward the loading dock. She hid behind a stack of blue industrial laundry crates. Peering through the gap, she saw it. A dark grey van with tinted windows was idling in the ambulance bay. It looked like a private medical transport, but there were no logos. Two men in EMT uniforms, but wearing shoes that cost more than Seraphil's car, were wheeling a gurney toward the back doors. On the gurney lay Aiden. He was strapped down, unconscious, a portable oxygen mask over his face. The man in the suit from the diner, the shark, was standing by the van's open door, checking his watch. "Careful with him," the shark said. "He needs to be alive when he signs the power of attorney. After that, feel free to let nature take its course." Seraphil's grip on the crate tightened until her knuckles turned white. They weren't taking him to a clinic. They were taking him to a slaughterhouse. She looked around. The ambulance bay was empty, except for the grey van, and a genuine hospital ambulance parked 2 spots over, its engine idling, lights off. The driver was nowhere to be seen, probably inside getting a coffee or signing paperwork. Seraphil looked at the satchel. She had the evidence. She could run. She could take Logan, get in her car, if they hadn't found it yet, and drive until the gas ran out. She could save herself. But then she remembered the way Aiden had looked at her toast, the way he had defended her to Rick. Family are just strangers who share your blood. "Not today," she hissed. "Logan, stay here," she commanded, tucking him behind the laundry crates. "Do not move until I come for you. Seraphil, no. Stay." Seraphil took a deep breath. She reached into the laundry bin next to her and grabbed a handful of dirty hospital linens. She sprinted across the bay, keeping low. The shark was distracted, typing on his phone. The 2 fake EMTs were busy lifting the gurney. Seraphil moved to the idling hospital ambulance. She opened the driver's door and climbed in. It was huge, smelling of diesel and antiseptic. She released the parking brake. She didn't turn on the sirens. She just shifted into drive and floored it. The ambulance lurched forward with a roar. The shark looked up, his eyes widening. "What the—" Seraphil didn't aim for the exit. She aimed for the grey van. Crunch. The ambulance slammed into the side of the van, pinning the passenger door shut and sending the shark diving onto the concrete to avoid being crushed. The impact jarred the 2 fake EMTs, and they dropped the gurney. Aiden's stretcher hit the ground with a clang, rolling wildly toward the ramp. Seraphil threw the ambulance into park and jumped out. The fake EMTs were scrambling to their feet, reaching for weapons inside their jackets. Seraphil didn't have a weapon. She had a fire extinguisher she had grabbed from the ambulance cab. She pulled the pin and sprayed a blinding white cloud of chemical foam directly into their faces. They coughed and flailed, blinded. "Aiden!" she screamed. She grabbed the foot of the gurney and shoved it toward the back of her stolen ambulance. It was heavy, dead weight. "Help me!" she yelled to the air. To God. To anyone. Logan appeared at her side. He wasn't strong, but he pushed. He pushed with everything he had. Together they shoved the gurney up the ramp and into the back of the ambulance. Seraphiel slammed the door shut just as a bullet pinged off the metal handle. "Get in the front, Logan." Seraphiel vaulted into the driver's seat. She saw the shark rising from the ground, a silenced pistol in his hand. He raised it, aiming right at her through the windshield. Seraphiel ducked. Thwack! The windshield spiderwebbed, a bullet hole appearing inches from her head. She stomped on the gas. The ambulance tires squealed, smoking against the asphalt, and then they were moving. They tore out of the bay, clipping the side of the ticket booth, and roared onto the main road. Seraphiel reached for the dashboard and flipped a switch. "Wee-oo, wee-oo!" The sirens wailed. The lights flashed. "Let's see you shoot at a moving ambulance on Main Street," she gritted out. In the rearview mirror, she saw the black SUVs peeling out of the hospital lot. The chase was on. The ambulance was a beast. It was top-heavy, slow to accelerate, and handled like a boat in a storm. But it was built like a tank. Seraphiel wove through the morning traffic of Scranton, blowing through red lights. The sirens parted the sea of cars, confused commuters pulling over to the shoulder. Behind her, 3 black SUVs were weaving through traffic, ignoring the rules of the road. They were gaining. "Seraphiel, the bad men are coming!" Logan shouted, kneeling on the passenger seat and looking out the back window. "I know, buddy. Hang on." She yanked the wheel to the left, taking a hard turn onto an industrial side street. The ambulance tilted dangerously, tools and medical supplies crashing around in the back. "Where are we going?" Logan cried. "I don't know," Seraphiel yelled back. Tears were streaming down her face now, the terror finally breaking through. "I don't know." From the back of the ambulance, a groan. "Aiden!" Seraphiel called out, glancing at the rearview mirror. Aiden was trying to sit up. The jolt of the crash and the adrenaline had pulled him from the darkness of the coma, at least partially. He looked like death warmed over, his skin translucent, but his eyes were open. "The tower," Aiden rasped. His voice was weak, amplified by the acoustics of the metal box. "What?" "Sterling. Tower," Aiden coughed. "Go to the tower." "Aiden, are you crazy?" Seraphiel shouted, swerving to avoid a pothole. "That's their headquarters. That's where Jaden is. That's suicide." "Not the lobby," Aiden wheezed. "The garage. Level B4. The private lift. Why would we go there?" "Because," Aiden managed to say, clutching the side of the gurney as the ambulance bounced over railroad tracks. "It's the only place. He can't see us. I built it. My panic room. The system is hardwired. Biometric. Only me." A bullet shattered the side mirror. Seraphiel screamed. The SUVs were right on her bumper. One of them pulled up alongside her, the window rolling down. A man leaned out with a submachine gun. "Get down!" Seraphiel shoved Logan's head into her lap. She slammed the brakes. The SUV, anticipating she would speed up, shot past her. Seraphiel spun the wheel hard to the right, T-boning the SUV's rear fender. The SUV spun out, crashing into a parked delivery truck. 1 down, 2 to go. "The tower," Seraphiel decided. "Okay, the tower." She gunned the engine, heading toward the skyline. The Sterling Tower was the tallest building in the city, a glass needle piercing the grey clouds. It was a monument to Aiden's ego. And now, it was their only hope. They reached the city centre. The traffic was denser here. Seraphil used the sirens to her advantage, driving on the wrong side of the road, forcing the SUVs to slow down or risk a pile-up. "Parking garage," she muttered. "Where is the entrance?" "West side," Aiden's voice came over the intercom. "Unmarked. Gate." Seraphil saw it. A grey steel rolling gate next to the main loading dock. It looked like a maintenance entrance. "It's closed," Seraphil yelled. "Ram it," Aiden said. "What?" "It's aluminum. Ram it." Seraphil closed her eyes for a split second, whispered a prayer, and floored it. Crash. The ambulance smashed through the metal gate like it was made of foil. The windshield finally gave way, showering the dashboard in safety glass. They skidded into the dark concrete ramp of the parking garage, the screech of metal on concrete echoing like a banshee. They spiraled down. Level B1. Level B2. The SUVs were behind them, their headlights blinding in the rear view. Level B4, Seraphil counted. "This goes that deep. Keep going." At level B4, the garage changed. It wasn't raw concrete anymore. It was polished epoxy. There were only 3 parking spots, all empty. At the far end was a thick steel door. "Stop!" "At the door," Aiden commanded. Seraphil slammed the brakes, stopping inches from the steel. "Out! Now!" she yelled at Logan. She jumped out and ran to the back doors. She hauled them open. Aiden was unbuckling himself, his hands shaking violently. "Help me!" he gasped. Seraphil grabbed him under the arms. He was lighter than she expected, wasted away by the poison. She dragged him out of the ambulance. The roar of engines grew louder. The SUVs were spiraling down. They had seconds. "The panel!" Aiden pointed to a blank section of the wall next to the steel door. "Press the brick." Seraphil pressed a specific brick in the wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a hand scanner. "My hand," Aiden wheezed. Seraphil lifted his trembling hand and pressed his palm against the glass. Beep. Identity confirmed. Aiden Sterling. "Welcome home, sir." The massive steel door hissed and began to slide open. It moved agonizingly slow. The first SUV screeched around the corner. The headlights pinned them against the wall. "Get in!" Seraphil threw Logan inside, then dragged Aiden. "There they are!" a voice shouted. Gunfire erupted. Pop, pop, pop. Bullets sparked against the closing steel door. Seraphil dove inside, pulling Aiden with her, just as the door sealed shut with a heavy final thud. Silence. They were in a small elevator. It was lined with wood and smelled of cedar and expensive scotch. Aiden slumped against the wall, sliding to the floor. "Safe," he whispered. "For how long?" Seraphil asked, checking Logan for bullet holes. He was shaking, but unharmed. "Long enough," Aiden said. He looked at the elevator buttons. There was only one button. Penthouse. He pressed it. The elevator began to rise, smoothly, silently. "The penthouse?" Seraphil asked. "Won't Jaden be there?" "Jaden hates the penthouse," Aiden said, a grim smile touching his lips. "He says it's too high. He gets vertigo. He works from the 40th floor. The penthouse is my fortress." The elevator opened. Seraphil gasped. They weren't just in an apartment. They were in a command center. The penthouse was a sprawling space of glass and steel, overlooking the entire city. But the windows were covered with blast shutters. One wall was entirely covered in monitors, all dark. Aiden crawled toward a massive mahogany desk. He pulled himself up into the leather chair. "Logan," Aiden said softly, "do you see that red switch on the wall? The one under the glass case?" Logan nodded. "Break the glass with this." Aiden handed him a heavy crystal paperweight. "And flip the switch." "What does it do?" Logan asked. "It wakes the house up." Logan took the paperweight. He smashed the glass. Crash. He flipped the switch. Moo. The room vibrated. The monitors on the wall flickered to life. One by one, they showed camera feeds. The lobby, the garage, the elevators, the hallways. And then the audio kicked in. "Sir," a computerized voice filled the room. "Lockdown protocol initiated. External communications severed. Internal security grid active. Threat level?" Aidan leaned into the desk microphone. "Threat level. Midnight. Authorization. Sterling Alpha 1. Confirmed. Deploying countermeasures." On the screens, Seraphil watched in awe as steel shutters slammed down over the main entrance of the building, trapping the SUVs inside the garage. Elevators froze between floors. Fire doors sealed every stairwell. Aidan Sterling had just turned his skyscraper into a prison, and the wolves were trapped inside with the lion. "Now," Aidan said, turning to Seraphil. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were burning with a terrifying intelligence. "Give me the satchel. It's time to call a board meeting." The scream of a diamond-tipped drill grinding against hardened steel filled the penthouse. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and panic. Aidan was slumped in the command chair, his face grey, the poison finally paralyzing his hands. I can't type," he wheezed, staring at the massive wall of monitors. The center screen displayed a live feed of the Sterling Global Board meeting in Geneva, where confused executives sat around a mahogany table. "Seraphil, the decryption key. It's the napkin numbers. You have to override the broadcast." Seraphil fumbled for the crumpled napkin in her pocket. 1492 1105. She hammered the keys on the console. 1 4. The steel door glowed cherry red in the center. 9 2. With a deafening boom, the door breached. Smoke billowed into the room. Jaden Sterling stepped through the haze, flanked by the shark and 2 mercenaries. He looked like a sharper, crueler version of his father. "Game over, Dad," Jaden sneered, leveling a pistol directly at Logan, who cowered behind the sofa. "Don't," Seraphil screamed, stepping between the gun and her brother. Jaden laughed, cold and hollow. "The papers are signed. You died of heart failure, old man. Tragic. And the waitress? A junkie who broke in and killed you. Even more tragic." "You poisoned him," Seraphil spat. "You've been killing him for months." "I expedited the inevitable," Jaden shrugged. "He was a dinosaur holding back progress. I'm just efficient." "Wait," Seraphil yelled, as Jaden raised the weapon to fire. "The offshore accounts. He was transferring the liquidity, the billions. If you shoot him now, the encryption locks forever. Only I know the last 2 digits." Greed flickered in Jaden's eyes. He hesitated, lowering the gun slightly. "Is that true?" "I saw the numbers," Seraphil lied, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Let the boy go, and I'll type them." "Type it," Jaden commanded. "Then you die." Seraphil turned to the console. She looked at the camera lens, blinking red above the monitor. She didn't type a bank transfer code. She typed the final sequence Aidan had given her. 0 5. Enter. The screen didn't show money. It flashed bright green. System override. Global broadcast active. Suddenly, the audio from the Geneva boardroom filled the penthouse. "Mr. Sterling," the chairman's voice boomed from the speakers, trembling. We can hear you. We can see everything." Jaden froze. He spun around to the main monitor. The board of directors were standing up, horror on their faces. Behind them, a massive screen showed the webcam feed from the penthouse. Live. "You were broadcasting," Jaden whispered, the blood draining from his face. "To the board," Aidan croaked, finding one last reserve of strength. "To Bloomberg. To the Jumbotron in Times Square. You didn't just confess to me, son. You confessed to the world?" Jaden screamed in primal rage, raising the gun again. "I'll kill you all!" Crash! The panoramic windows shattered inward. Two figures repelled through the glass, flashbangs detonating with blinding white light. Simultaneously, the elevator doors pinged open. A SWAT team poured in, shields raised. "Federal agents, drop the weapon!" Jaden dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a hollow clatter. He was on his knees, zip-tied, before the smoke even cleared. Seraphil slid down the side of the desk, her legs turning to jelly. Logan rushed into her arms. She looked over at Aiden, who was being attended to by a medic. The old man, pale but alive, caught her eye. He gave her a weak, trembling thumbs up. "Did we win?" Logan asked, his voice shaking. Seraphil hugged him tight, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. "Yeah, buddy. We won." And that is how Seraphil Jenkins went from a waitress scraping by on tips to the owner of the city's most beloved community landmark. She proved that kindness isn't a weakness, it's an investment. You never know who is sitting in your section. You never know if the person everyone else ignores is the one person who can change your life. Aiden Sterling passed away 3 years later, peaceful in his sleep. His son, Jaden, is currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences. And every morning, at 5:15 a.m. sharp, Seraphil pours a cup of coffee and sets it at booth 4. Just in case. If you enjoyed this story of justice, karma, and the power of kindness, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. What would you do if you found out your regular customer was a billionaire? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.